Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice, but I'm very, very tired. It's been about a 12-hour day of streaming today, and I have some very, very, very busy plans for the rest of the week. So, not going to mess around, going to get right into the Q&A. No lightning round, just going to get right into the Q&A so we can get through everything in a timely fashion, and I can go forward with what I'm doing. Thank you to our sponsors over on Patreon. They don't have to support, they choose to. So thank you to all of them. And on top of that, the usual stuff from my Twitch sponsor links below. Every plate's still there until October 13th. Advanced GG with the discount code, the 30% discount code, and Steel Series with the 12%. So thank you to all of them, and let's get started. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Happy, hope you're doing okay. My thoughts are with you and your mother. Been through some family health issues before, and I hope they're not too hard on you. Thank you very much. And, hi. Yeah, I'm super exhausted right now. My question today. On Sage, do you know if Physis 2 increases HP recovered by healing action by 10% buff stacks with Zoe's increased? Yeah, there's no reason those wouldn't stack. I mean, if you had Fraxis on somebody as well, it would also stack. Or if you had Asylum on somebody or Fey Illumination, all that stuff would stack. What I can't tell you off the top of my head is if it's multiplicative or additive. I think it's multiplicative, but I'm not a healer main, so I'm not saying that with any degree of confidence, but they do stack at the very least. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey Haps, hope you and your loved ones are doing well. Same to you. Long-time viewer and first-time asker. Welcome. So here's a two-part question. Hokey dokey. With Square recently stating they're balancing the jobs around difficulty to play, I'd like to hear your stance on this, especially when difficulty can be very subjective. Yeah, I think there's a way of doing this based on the average perceived mastery level. I mean, we see it in other games where, you know, something is rated by its difficulty to play, and the devs are like aware of, even if somebody's really good at it or can be really good at it and think it's easy, there's still like there's data to suggest that people perform within a certain range more frequently, both in quality assurance and testing behind the scenes, and then once a job is actually live. So I think there is some room to approach this in a certain way, but I don't think it should be a major point in their development process. Balance between the jobs based on their aesthetic and based on their role within the party should be more important than how difficult they are to play, because that should really come down to somebody's preference in regards to what job they just like to play. And if they like to play a more challenging job, then, you know, this is at least more engaging to them. For the second question, considering a lot of discussion on the difficulty of jobs coming from a very high-skilled portion of the player base who keep asking for more complexity and dislike recent changes, I think their perspective on the topic takes into account the rest of the player base. Yeah, they don't... So they balance the job's top end around things like difficulty to play and their role and all that other stuff. Like, it's definitely around the top end. But they also 100% take into account the people who play closer to the skill floor. That's why we still get adjustments to a lot of stuff that really doesn't affect the higher skill portion of the player base, and in some cases remove some of the skill required in order to bring the floor up, so the difference between the worst performing people and the best performing people is somewhat closer together. However, they take a few too many steps to do that, and what ends up happening is the people who are closer to the skill floor never improve even when the job is just given free stuff, and the people at the ceiling become less satisfied with what they're playing. So I don't think they've, even after all these years, and honestly it's kind of a hard thing to figure out regardless of how many years you've been developing the game, I don't think they've figured out exactly how to approach raising the floor without lowering the ceiling, because there are ways to do it, but they always take approaches that they just want to squish the gap versus actually focusing on bringing the floor up. So some of their changes go both ways, and that doesn't really fly with some people. So I think they need to be less afraid to have more complex jobs and have a bigger array of their jobs be complex jobs, while still offering some simple job choices, which they did in the past, and they've just leaned more and more towards simple job choices. And some of that also a result of the 2-minute buff window thing going into Endwalker. So it's a whole huge topic that's just intertwined with a lot of the other topics going around right now. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Happy. Hope you're doing well. Same to you. I know it doesn't sound like I'm doing well, but it's just because I've already been streaming for 12 hours. And now I'm recording this after. Don't worry. I ate before doing this, but, you know, it's just been a long day of talking. Based on Sage, Reaper, and Summoner, how would you rate your confidence in the design for new jobs for 7.0 and beyond? Pretty good. I really like what they've achieved with Sage Reaper. And even in theory, what they've achieved with New Summoner. I want it to be a little bit more involved than it is now. But what they've shown with these 3 jobs in particular is a very clear identity translated to gameplay style of developing. What they need to do now is figure out ways to elaborate that without destroying what they set up, because the problem with a lot of these job setups, and this is also even going back to Gunbreaker, the expansion before, is that it almost feels like they've left no room to add something new. So whatever they do add that's new isn't that exciting, or is very, very simple in its implementation. You know, Double Down is absolutely exciting for Gunbreaker, but essentially they gave them another cartridge and gave them a skill that uses 2 cartridges. So, I mean, how in-depth is that as an addition? You know, that's not quite the same as when some jobs get like whole new kind of things to maintain, like Bard with Radiant Finale. Well, in terms of interaction, is not that major, and not much else about Gunbreaker changed. And I'm curious to see if Sage, Reaper, and Summoner end up in a similar boat. Sage, very likely to end up in that boat. I think Reaper is also going to stay very close to itself going into the next expansion. Whereas Summoner, I hope they do something to expand upon it now, because right now I don't see what they add that is not just another thing that rotates with every summon you get, like a one extra button you press every time you do one of your summons. So I'm curious to see where that ends up landing. And so I'm not too worried about other jobs being overly simplified, but I am thinking about how, once they've translated identity to gameplay, how they expand upon it further, because that should be what you achieve when you update that. You should be creating a baseline that you expand upon, not something you have to redo every so often. So I'm hoping that's what they feel like they've achieved with these jobs for the time being. And the very next one, hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hope for the best with your mom. Thank you. I'll take that as a hello. It's a very kind thing to say. As someone who's delving into healing, which would you say is a good starting pure healer and barrier healer? I mean, White Mage Scholar. Astro, I think, is the stronger choice of the starting ones, but White Mage is very straightforward and easy to understand as a pure healer. Scholar actually has a few things that you have to get used to that maybe seem a little strange, but it's also very versatile, and there's some wiggle room to kind of learn. Whereas Sage, everything is, I think, a little more straightforward in terms of what your gameplay loop is going to look like, but there's no leeway. You have to pretty much do exactly the same things at exactly the same points, or your job efficiency is diminished to some capacity. So I would just say the OGs, White Mage and Scholar. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Haps. Hi. You mentioned Neo Exdeath being one of your favorite door bosses. I did. With all the door bosses we got in Savage and Alliance raids. Alliance? Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess we have Diablos. We have Ultima. Yeah, I didn't really think about those too much as door bosses. But yeah, I mean, they are. By all definitions of the word, they absolutely are. Which other ones feel good from a design perspective? I think, honestly, Exdeath's the only one. 24-mans don't matter, because the odds of that door boss really being... If anything, a door boss in a 24-man is what we call pug insurance, where I won't have to do that first phase again, so this pickup group won't be stuck here for as long. But Neo Exdeath into Neo Exdeath is the only one I legitimately praise. That's not to say that there aren't good door boss fights. I think the first phase of the latest one, for example, is an awesome fight. But what is achieved collectively across both phases, I think, is best done by Exdeath and Neo Exdeath. I much prefer bosses like Eden Titan and Eden Shiva, which are longer singular encounters, but just have a whole lot more oomph and pressure, and there's just a completely different feeling when progressing them versus the formulaic, you know, here's a tight DPS and mechanical check combined, something very fast paced for the first phase, followed by a puzzle boss for the second phase. It just isn't working out for me. So that's the only one, in my honest opinion, is Exdeath and Neo Exdeath. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays with Mr. Happy Mondays. That's a new one. Hey, Haps, how's it going? Hi. Hope your mom's health stuff goes better. Yeah, me too. What do you know? We're in the same boat. Had a question for you about raid tiers. Okay. Which do you think is worse for the player base? A raid tier that is far too hard, or a raid tier that is far too easy? Raid tier that's far too hard. Gordius almost single-handedly re-killed this game because there was nothing else to do other than Gordius, and Gordius was too hard for pretty much everyone in the community to do. And that happens a lot with some raid tiers where there's like a huge content gap because they're giving people time to do MSQ, to do a few like basic things, and to check out the raid. So I think a raid tier that's too hard, because people are going to stop playing quicker if the raid tier is too hard, versus if the raid tier is too easy, they're at least likely to clear it and keep logging in and playing to get through the raid multiple times, especially if there's going to be like another piece of content that they want the gear for coming down the line, something like an ultimate or criterion or whatever. So I just feel like the tangible difference is, and also when a raid tier is too easy, it means people who don't raid are actually going to get into it, and the overall clear rate is going to go up, which means more people are participating. All it means is the people who are really good and will clear it super quick, they'll stop playing and they'll raid log a lot quicker. But they are the minority, as sad as it is to say, as someone who raids quite a bit. So I just think the raid tier being too hard is way worse for the community than a raid tier that's too easy. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey Haps, hi. Hope you and your fam are doing well. Same to you. Just a quick question about Octopath Traveler. Yes. With the announcement that OT2 will be on PS4/5, do you think it was likely the original will finally be on PlayStation? I've already heard rumors, even before OT2 was announced. I was hearing rumors that Octopath was going to be hitting the PlayStation 4 and 5. I actually heard it was going to happen this month, but it was going to be like a shadow drop almost. But I don't know the validity of that claim. I think that might have just been spreading like wildfire because Triangle Strategy. So let me give you a timeline. So before we learned that Triangle Strategy was going to be hitting PC and that Octopath Traveler 2 would even be coming out, a few online retailers that same morning actually had them listed on their site. And a couple of them had Octopath Traveler on PlayStation 4 and 5 listed. So that's why I think that's circulating. But I don't know how valid those claims are. Because I didn't ever actually see the sites myself. And it's very easy for someone to make something like that look real. I had seen some images from some retailers that showed Octopath Traveler 2 on this platform, this platform, this platform. And Triangle Strategy releasing on PC. I saw those, but then I saw some other retailers that had mention of Octopath Traveler on PlayStation 4 or 5. So, but the fact that that didn't get announced means I can't in any good conscience say that. I think it would be silly not to if it's not Nintendo exclusive, as long as they don't have something where it has to be with the first game console exclusive to the Switch, then it should. But we don't know what the dealings are between Square Enix and Nintendo when it comes to that title. So I can't say anything for certain, but I'd keep my eye out for it. Quick lightning round before I answer the one in front of us. Someone was just asking me what changes I would make to Machinist. I did just make a video about that. That question came out before I released that video. So if you haven't seen my Machinist change video, go check that out because that goes into quite a bit of depth about the job's current problems and how they could be alleviated through multiple different avenues. So that's a fun watch. As for what's in front of us, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey Haps, hi. Hope everything goes well with your mother. Thank you. My question is, how would I be able to complete Shadowbringer's relic weapon in a timely manner now that Zadnor's dead? Zadnor shouldn't be that dead. Zadnor tier 3 is still very popular for leveling. It's Zadnor tier 1 and 2 that are a little shaky. But the big thing is that Zadnor, these zones scale depending on the number of people in the zone. So with a decent number of actions, you can solo them all pretty reliably. Not to mention, those ones in particular don't have to be earned from Zadnor. You can technically earn them by doing, I think, normal mode raids elsewhere. So if you were to just even queue into some normal mode raids, you'd probably get them done in a reasonable time frame. But Zadnor shouldn't be that much of an issue with decent actions. And also, it shouldn't be completely dead unless you're playing at really, really weird times. So that's I don't know what time of day you're playing. That's just what it should be because I go into Zadnor and I find tons of people. Same with Eureka still. So it's a very different experience on my end. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Good, one of each. No way I was going to miss this one. Hello. Hi. Hope your week was well. Thank you. It was pretty good. It was productive. Long-time viewer, first-time asker. Welcome. From what I'm hearing from friends, the current balance of tanks was bad. It's incorrect. Paladin is not good. Warrior, with the little bit of buffs they got, helped a lot with their DPS differential. But honestly, even with them being lower than Gunbreaker and Dark Knight, Warrior is such a machine when it comes to reliability in endgame raids that now that P8S has been nerfed, it really doesn't matter. Especially with all the gear that's available now on top of that, it really doesn't matter. Paladin is the only sad point, and you can still do everything on Paladin. It's not like a problem, but at the same time, you are definitely picking the weaker choice when you pick Paladin. But other than that, it's really not a problem. 2 out of the 4 tanks have been good for quite some time now, and Warrior's reliability has left it even with the reduced DPS, still a very popular pick, especially after the most recent buffs. So, yeah, I wouldn't agree with that assessment. Paladin's getting reworked in 6.3, so I'm trying to do the whole damage versus utility thing. I don't think really works right now. I don't think there's a differential between them enough to even try to make that comparison or to try to deliberately design it that way. Also, Paladin has an issue with its personal mitigation. It might have really good utility with the extra raid mit, but it also has a problem with its personal mit that probably needs to be resolved. So there's issues that are outside the scope of what you're asking, but I wouldn't say the tank's role is that imbalanced. I'd just say there are two clear picks, one comfort pick and one that's going to be getting work in a couple months anyway. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey Haps, hope you're doing well. Same to you. Hi. How'd you feel about having a brush with death debuff in extreme or savage content? Is that the name of the debuff where you can't res in like DRS? I'm imagining it would work by getting a 30 or 60 second debuff that prevents additional raises on that player once they are raised in a fight. I think that would be a decent way to balance raise utility. Here's what I've really struggled with. I think raises are too strong in Final Fantasy 14, but at the same time, it is so good when you are the person who saves everyone. When you get all the chain reses out, do all the mechanics right at the same time. In the case of being a healer, you top everyone up. You make sure nobody else dies. You pay attention to the mechanics. You rescue people. Like, having that much power over other people's potential errors feels really good. I did it in a clear for one party the other week. We had like 4 people die to a mechanic. I swift cast res one. I then slow res another one. They got someone, and then I slow res the third person. I had to make sure that the tank stayed alive through whatever mechanic, and res somebody who got killed because the tank buster went on them because the other tank had died and was still getting up. And then one person was in the wrong spot, so I rescued them to the right spot and then went back to my spot. So it's tough because I like this idea. I think is reasonable. I think it's a solution, but I also just, it's so hard to want to part with that feeling. You know, it's tough. It's tough because I don't just want that feeling. I like that feeling everywhere, but I wouldn't mind if they took this approach to it. I think it'd be fine. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Greetings to you, sir. Hello. And an extra greeting to those who forget. I don't think we've had anyone forget this week. Closest we had was someone skipping the hello and going into hope you're doing well, which is a hello pretty much. I've been playing through Pixel Remaster recently and I've completed 1 through 4, but find myself stalling out on 5. Can't bring myself to be attached to or care about any of the characters. The job system is cool, but it seems to be about the only thing I am a fan of. And nostalgia for 1 and 2 as I played them when I was younger. Thoroughly enjoyed 3 and 4. 3 Pixel Remaster is good, yeah. Not the 3D one. 5 for some reason is just leaving me empty. Most people I talk to love 5, so I get your opinion. I mean, I love the characters of 5. 5 is a lot more like a Saturday morning cartoon is what I like to say. The villains are a bit over the top and flamboyant even to a degree, while the protagonists are only serious at times but are otherwise quite charming and fun-loving. So it feels a lot more like you're going through an adventure with friends, I guess is the way I would put it, versus like a super serious, like everybody's treating this world super seriously kind of situation. So and I jive with that. That makes for a fun overall experience in my opinion. So that's where I'm at. Yeah, whereas 4 is like really brooding. Edge is really the only character that is kind of on that upfront and fun. I mean, actually, no, that's not true. Cid is also pretty up there when it comes to, you know, a more positive character. Palom and Porum for a tiny bit, but they obviously have a super serious moment in there. But otherwise, like most of the main cast is really serious. So 5 is more characters that are like Edge, Palom, Porum, and Cid. So I guess it just depends on how you feel about those kinds of characters. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, hello, wave. A few extras in case someone forgot one. There we go. I even gave you the physical wave back. You even said it again. Hey there. I hope you and your family are doing well. A long-time lurker, first-time asker. Welcome. I have 2 questions. I understand tanking isn't your forte. I played Gladiator Paladin since I started 14 and have grown to love the steady but strict rotation as I tend to get tripped up with busy openers and reopeners. So with unlikely changing Paladin and, well, 6.3, not 5.3. That's a while ago. You'd recommend transitioning. I mean, I don't want the 2-minute window thing to be a thing for every job, but it is. And it's going to be. No doubt they're going to give them a more direct 2-minute window. They might still keep the rest of the kind of strictness. I mean, every other job that has a 2-minute window still kind of has to follow a strict GCD pattern until they get to their 1 and 2 minute windows, or when they get to them, they're going to be off. Paladin just has no room for any errors at all. So they'll probably keep it, they'll probably just bring it more in line with the rest of the jobs in the game. So I suspect, yeah, it'll definitely have a busy 2 minute window. Well, here's the thing. It doesn't necessarily have to have a busy 2 minute window. It just needs to have all of its skills that hit the hardest during 2 minutes, which realistically means Requiescat's probably going to be a 2 minute cooldown. I can't imagine them doing it any other way. And that just means some other changes as well that'll come with that, about how the rest of their 1 minute, the other 1 minute and 59 seconds are going before that. So we'll just have to wait and see. To his Paladins, 2 separate 1 minute buffs with FOF Requiescat, likely the reason Paladin had such good damage in Shadowbringers when the buff windows were more spread out. I don't remember super well. I could have swore that you still rolled 2 separate 1 minute buffs with Fight or Flight. Didn't you still just roll Fight or Flight into Requiescat in Shadowbringers? Like you would Fight or Flight, get a Goring, do an Atonement, do a combo, do your Atonements, do Goring, and then go back in the and then Requiescat. I could have swore it was almost exactly the same as it is now. It's just a little stricter now because of the extra GCDs filling up the Goring Blade window and the 2 minute buff window not really being conducive to Paladin's overall design. I'm pretty sure that it was exactly the same, at least close to exactly the same there. There just wasn't as much emphasis on 2 minute buff windows as there is now. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, hello, good day. Look, tons of hellos again. Real quick question. What are split clears? Split clears are where a group of 8 people in a static split their raid into 2 separate groups. You have 4 people on their mains, their characters that they always play, they progress with, their character they've been using forever. And 4 other people go on their alts. And you funnel all of the gear that drops into the 4 mains. Anything they need, they get. And the alts can maybe pick up scraps if there's anything left over. So you clear all 4 of the fights. All the loot gets funneled to those 4 people. And then you swap. The other 4 people get on their mains. And the original 4 people get on their alts. And you do the same thing. You funnel all the loot into 4 people. It essentially doubles the loot pool between 8 people every week. And it allows you to be completely done with gearing by usually the 3rd or 4th week, depending on how many upgrade materials you need, how many tome items you need, because you can't do splits with tomes, obviously. you can't just suddenly get double the tomes. That doesn't work the same way as it does with raid stuff. So, but yeah, at least all the raid drops themselves that aren't upgrade mats. The biggest thing is that it doubles the amount of upgrade mats that you get per week. You're going to get 2 upgrade mats because you're doing 6 twice. You're going to get 2 upgrade mats because you're doing 7 twice. And so you're going to speed through that. And then you can buy whatever's left over with books, not to mention you're competing with less people for any individual piece of loot. But it's something that's more common in WoW, but it's going to be something that's expected of hardcore groups in 6.4. I have no doubt after the way Abyssos went. It's definitely going to be, any hardcore group's going to demand splits going into 6.4's raid tier. So I just saw a lightning round question that said it was missed last week, but I'm pretty sure, like 99% sure I answered last week. Somebody asked how I checked my ping in 14, and I'm almost positive I said I either use my resource monitor or I IP or I ping the an IP in Sacramento, because that's where the North American data center is seemingly located. So I'm positive I answered that last week, but that is my answer again, just in case. Hashtag oh, we finally have somebody who didn't say hello. So we got spares for you. Don't worry about that. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. The YouTube algorithm has introduced me to 14 specialists over the last few months, like Rin and Xeno for tanks and Momo for healers. They're great, but I've been looking for specialist YouTuber for other jobs and roles, but haven't gotten results. Do you know of any? I mean, for DPS, it's a bit of a mixed bag, because there's, how would I put this? There are absolutely people who are specialists in individual jobs. Like I could technically expert in quite a few jobs myself, but I don't really play any of them hardcore enough to sort of have that authority, because I'm willing to just swap from monk to bard to dancer to black mage. Like I can play them all. It's just, I don't sit down and like make one role my identity like some other people do. And with DPS, that tends to happen because people are usually willing to swap around. There's less one trick people in the DPS role than there are in tanks and healers, I feel. Sorry, it's something stuck in my mouth. I'll give you a good example. Serana is, he's a hardcore Fizz range player. He's a machinist enthusiast, but unless you know the endgame scene, you might not know Serana. Then you have... See, even I'm having trouble thinking of them because, like, it's pretty much the same thing. Whenever I need experts in those individual ones, I always reference that. But, like, I know people who are, like, Svi for Black Mage, you know? It's like I know people who are in these kind of positions. But I agree with you. Just across the DPS role, just the DPS are swapping what they're playing a lot more frequently. And each of them is its own learning experience, its own mastery experience. So if they're not, like, dedicated to it for life, then it just doesn't have that same authority. So I think that's why you're having trouble finding it. That's why the Balance Discord, just going to the guides there, is normally the way to go, because sometimes those people do YouTube videos, sometimes they don't, but at least the resources are generally agreed upon. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Haps. Hi, kitties. They're not in here. They're locked out, desperately trying to claw at the door. An extra hi in case someone forgets. Oh, we got plenty of spares this week. What's your opinion on Savage loot rules and group making? I'm going to have to read the rest of this. Quite all right with the amount of loot given, but I take great issue with the fact that loot is locked away for others depending on your clear status for the week, and this affects other players. That is very much a measure to prevent mercenaries from just farming gear for everybody. And creating a service out of it, because if it didn't have an effect, basically groups of 7 would just sell loot runs to people nonstop, and sales is already a pretty major problem in Final Fantasy XIV post games. People charging real money for clears and loot and stuff like that. So if they can do anything to prevent that to some capacity, you know, this ends up being at least something they can do. It at least inhibits it to a degree, even if those people still absolutely find ways to, you know, by having like a ton of characters, for example, to make sure they can do whatever they can for a given week. This creates an only unsocial group content in the game, or a player that's cleared earlier can't. So that's not true. Yeah, so you can do it without penalties. I actually have a different opinion about this. I think people who have not cleared a fight need to get over their first clear being a 2-chest clear. Because once you get the first clear, you generally can get into parties that clear more easily, as long as you're not an absolute sandbagger dead all the time, in which case I would honestly, if I was doing a clear for one and helping somebody get through, and they were on the ground the whole time, I would tell the whole group to wall it, because that person, I don't want to unleash them on the party finder. They need to learn it properly. But I mean, this just goes to say, like, there's issues with every side of it. But I'm of the opinion that people are way too obsessed with their first clear being a 2-chest clear. You just need to get your clear first, then you can worry about getting the loot, because the first step is a lot harder for some people than the second step is. So that's just, it's a completely different kind of side tangent to what you're asking, but still. If you're asked to help, say, with P6 by someone who haven't raided yet this week, you can either choose to forfeit the loot from P5. Gotta find another group. I mean, yeah, that's fine. I mean, keep in mind, these are also problems that only persist up to a point, because the loot lockout does get removed at some point, and thus the order that you can actually perform it unlocks at some point. But I think they should be unlocking it earlier. They should be unlocking it in 0.3 or 0.5, you know, the odd-numbered patch, for example. I think a change here where different players' loot status for the week does not affect others could greatly improve. Yeah, but like I said, there's way too many abuses. There's more abuses for that system than there are positives, in my opinion. And you will see them run rampant if this is something that were to be done. So that's why I think it's a thing. But also, again, if your first clear, your example doesn't involve first clears, but I'm saying if you're going for your first clear, do not be afraid to any chest, because once you have the first clear, getting the loot will be much quicker. Another quick lightning round one. I'm almost certain I touched upon this either last week in the Q&A, or maybe it was like in a video that was like a day or two before or after. But it was about melding, having different melds for different jobs in the same gear set. People have been asking for that forever. So there's no indication that it's happening anytime soon, but it's, you know, it's there. So people have been asking for it. So it's already out in the universe. So it's just, you know, it just hasn't happened yet. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. For what's in front of us now. Hello, and best wishes to you and your mother. Thank you. I have a question about Monk that I can't find the answer to. When you disengage from the boss, do you always use Six-Sided Star? Yes, if you will be gone exactly the amount of time it takes to get back to your GCD. What I mean by that is, if you could... So Six-Sided Star is twice the length of your GCD. So if you would step away from the boss for less than that amount of time, then you automatically don't want to do it. If you're going to step away from the boss for more than that time, then you would do something like Six-Sided Star and then maybe do a meditation stack while you're waiting. You know, that depends, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you almost never want to end up in a situation where you are away from the boss for that long. There's very few mechanics that a melee needs to do that for. So that's like I made a mistake and I'm playing extra safe kind of thing that you would end up doing. So if it's going to be less than double that time, 1 GCD and a chakra stack is fine. If it's going to be for exactly that time, perfect. If it's going to be for more than that time, then Six-Sided Star and then chakra stacks afterwards. So those are the options that you're looking at. Hashtag Happy Mondays with Mr. I like it. Nice mix up. Hey, Haps. Hi. Was wondering if you had tried the Star Ocean 6 demo. I have. And if so, did you have any significant frame rate issues? Yes, in the open field areas, right before the end of the demo. Massive frame rate issues over by the Mudman boss. So, yeah, it was really bad when I got to that area. So, yeah, hopefully it's not as bad when it launches, because what else is there to say? I had that issue and I don't want that issue when it launches. So, fingers crossed, I guess. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello. Hi. Look, see, physical wave again. Do you remember when the new NA worlds are coming to 14? I mean, not off the top of my head, but that information is on the lodestone. If you just go look at the data center expansion information, it has the full timeline over on the lodestone. As for when we'll get more information, I mean, when those times come. I mean, that's it. Everything is in. I don't remember the name of the post, but it's all on the lodestone. So if you just head over there, you'll find all the answers to those questions. Can we band together as a community and get better purple and green dyes? I'm colorblind, so I don't know what those even look like. So enjoy. All right, I am like fully losing my voice at this point. I've been struggling to get through these last few questions. So yeah, let's lightning around through the rest of them. We had a hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy here that I'd started to read and realized that I should probably just lightning around it. Started playing 14 around 4.55. Every job has some form of stance or stances that has to be managed or used properly. Why were stances such a prevalent design element at the time? Because it's an easy way to track when something is happening, both for yourself and when an ally is looking at you. However, it's also very homogenous. So making it so that every job, that's why they moved to job gauges mostly, because a job gauge effectively works as a stance. But now you don't need a stance to generate resources. It's just tied to this like arbitrary gauge that it can be indicated differently. So it's essentially the same thing. Like what we have now is the same thing. We just don't have a stance for all those names. It's just a job gauge that's associated with us all the time. Then we have another one here. What do you think is the most important ingredient or thing to look out for in making coffee? The only important ingredient in coffee is the bean, because I drink my coffee black, so that's all that matters to me. Question regarding cooldowns as a DPS. If you mess up your rotation with the lineup, it best just use the cooldowns as they come up. Yeah. The only time you wouldn't want to use the cooldowns right when they come up, even if you screw up, is if you will not lose a use across the rest of the fight by waiting. Almost every time, though, you are going to lose a use. Like, you'd have to know down to the second when that boss is going to die. So, yeah, you're just screwed across the rest of the fight. There's really no way around it. Volume lowering thing, isn't that mic accuracy? Yeah, no, it is. So I've taken care of that, the microphone adjusting thing. It's only when I use Discord for voice, but I also have the settings turned off in Discord, and I have exclusive control turned off. So even if Discord were to do that, then it shouldn't affect the microphone at all, because they can't take exclusive control of it. So it hasn't done it in a while, and I literally just like flicked on and off every setting that I had on all my programs, and it's fine. It hasn't changed in a while. So maybe it was just funky for whatever reason. I don't know. It's been sitting at a nice 70% now for the last 3 weeks or so. Maybe like 2.5 weeks, something more like that. Then we have another one. We're getting into Chocobo racing recently. Oh, God. Is there any announcement said passing anything new tracks? No, there was one dude who worked on Chocobo racing, and he is working on completely different stuff right now. So there's no reason to suspect we're getting anything anytime soon for Chocobo racing. So you talked about your feelings on Reses. Want to get your opinion on Tank Involns? Don't like them. I really like this tier because it makes Tank Involns less useful. Love it. Tank Involns, way too egregious of a design. Would be completely okay if they were all gone from the game. If you just gave every job one more regular defensive and got rid of invulns, I would be perfectly fine with that. 2 quick questions here. What would be the response if all DPS raid utility was removed and all jobs became selfish? It'd be even lamer, in my opinion. There's almost no flavor to the jobs at all. What would happen if crit hit became crit rate and direct hit became crit potency? Yeah, people have suggested that. I mean, it just means that we'd still be stacking only those two. So does it change anything? Yeah, probably calculation-wise, but gearing-wise, probably not. There might be like a sweet spot where you want exactly a certain amount of crit rate and crit damage to get the mathematical best solution. But it just means direct hit would be the most... It wouldn't be any less swingy than it is now. We would just have two different stats to achieve the same level of swing. Or I'm sorry, we'd be using the same two stats to determine the swinginess of our DPS. So nothing ends up really changing at that point. Let's see... Then we have what if question for res solutions. How'd you feel if res if they had a small HP cost? No, I don't think HP cost is the way to go. Also, it couldn't be a small HP cost. It would have to be a significant HP cost, especially if you're saying it instead of MP. Yeah, no, it would have to be a very significant HP cost, and that I think is not any better of a solution. So, yeah, that doesn't tickle me. Let's see. Could you get SteelSeries to do a limited run of the old Merc stealth keyboard? Listen, I make suggestions to them from time to time, but they don't just take my requests on a whim. So, at most I'd be like, yeah, I had somebody ask about this, and they're not going to look at one person and be like, oh, one person asked on a YouTube comment section. Let me do that. It doesn't work, you know? So, I wish it wasn't the case. I wish I could just say that and they would do it and you could have exactly what you want, but that's just not how, just not how it works. I don't know. That's just how it is. I have a question regarding mitigations and snapshots. A Minotaur spawns and tethers to you. You press Magic Barrier and Addle on tree. Do both reduce the damage? No, because the damage isn't coming from the boss. It's coming from the tree. So anything that comes from an add of that kind will not be affected by Addle or Reprisal or anything like that. So same situation with P8S Phase 1. Rearing Rampage. When do I have to press Addle so the group takes less damage from the stone pillars? So I think that's 4 cases of damage. I think that's done on a per hit basis. So if you were to do it halfway through, it would only affect the last couple of slams. And it's the same with the jumps back and forth. I think that's considered 4 individual cases of an attack being executed. But I always just say be safe and do it before the cast. And even if you do it before the cast, it lasts long enough to hit all 4 of them anyway. And if you have 2 melees, you feint the first Rearing Rampage and then the actual jumps later. You just break it up into 2 feints. Let's see. Is there any connection between Barbaricha and Califasteri? No. No, unless they want to write one in, but no, there isn't. Let's see. I think we're almost done here. Summoner question. I don't really use Emerald right. You should be using all of your rights because they're all higher DPS than not using them. It's just more damage because the GCD on Emerald Right is way lower than your GCD on Ruin 3. So it doesn't matter the potency because you're hitting 4 times in 6 seconds as opposed to twice in 5 seconds. So that's fairly significant as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, there we go. I think that's all of them. There's someone asking what range tax is, and that's just the fact that you can freely move around. So you need to do less damage because you don't have to worry about being within a certain range of the boss. But if the boss's hitbox is so big, then everyone doesn't have to worry about that. So there shouldn't be a range tax. Anyway, that's going to be a wrap for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. There's a good chance I'm this tired for next week's episode because I'm doing another 12-hour stream most likely next Sunday. So, yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Be sure to ask your questions in the comment section of the video below. Remember all the sponsors from the Twitch side of things. Those all support the channel as well. And I will be back next week. We'll be doing videos throughout the week, too. I got a few things I got to make, so keep an eye out for some fun stuff. Anyway, I will see all of you in the next weekly Q&A or in another video. And until then, take care.